I didn't really think about it as not very smart. She's just kind of lost. Like, she doesn't really know who she wants to be. She's trapped between the expectations of, her family and mother and stuff like that. So she comes off as a bit more stupid than she actually is. She's just kind of lost. But yeah, I think it tells a bit about your personality, because I know people who can't, for the shits of it, they can't befriend Sophia, and they always end up liking Gloria because they do stuff that just ends up pleasing her. There's like this scene a bit later when you have a heart-to-heart talk with her, and really a lot depends on what you say there and what you did before. So it's stuff like that. But yeah, we try to make the choices subtle. I don't really like a situation where you're like talking to a person in a visual novel and you have two options, and like one is, I don't know, I hate you, and one is, oh, you're so pretty. And
yeah, it's too on the nose.
Yeah, and when you press it, then a little, relationship bar comes up and says, oh, this person now likes you 5% more. I thought it's kind of silly, and also...
They do comment, Zach just mentioned Peralt needs to go to the store to buy more belts. They do mention later in the game, why does he wear all these belts? Or make fun of him, like, what do you use all these belts for?
His belts are a fan favorite. I guess every fan fiction written for this game that involves Perrault.
Oh Lord! I'm sure he uses those belts for
talks about his belts, so there must be something in it. There was one fan fiction which found a really interesting use for those belts, but I don't know if you want to hear it on your live stream.
Was it autoerotic asphyxiation?
Not really autoerotic.
We get pretty dark on this stream, so you can tell us.
Yeah, this is an 18 and up stream, so I promise you won't offend any of our delicate sensibilities or those of the chat. They've been put through so much, so.
There's just a lot of fanfiction on this game, and of course, like by the rule of fanfiction, a lot of it is deeply erotic, and some of it is really like cool, like like it answers really important questions, like how to make Sophia do a blowjob to a prince in just one paragraph. That's actually a pretty good writing exercise to come up with something like that. And yes, of course, Perrault uses his belts for like everything sex related because because fans.
Oh my god!
But actually, my favorite one is when Cinders gets on with both Commander Shepard and Alistair from Dragon Age, and this is like the best thing ever. I just can't find the link for it.
Well, you mentioned Dragon Age, so like BioWare stuff an influence on you?
Maybe not directly. There's some stuff that BioWare does that I don't like their morality systems, which are, as I said, just good guy, Paragon, bad guy, Renegade. So we wanted to avoid that. But also, it appeared a lot of our fans are also Dragon Age fans. I didn't know that before we released the game. But also, a lot of stuff I did here was intentionally going to be different than Dragon Age, because what I really hated in Dragon Age was that if I made some choice and it upset a character, it was like, oh, this character disapproves, -8 or something.
Yeah.
And I felt like, oh no, I have to correct that, I have to win the game, I have to max out every possible stat, so I loaded up and took the dog in my party, because the dog never disapproves. And I thought it's really stupid, and oh yeah, Morgan disapproves, precisely. And I wanted it to make it that, like, you should make choices based... You should make choices made on what you actually think, not on some hidden stat that you want to max. So in a way, BioWare influenced us, but not directly.
So, there's several writers on this game, actually. How did you divvy up the writing, and was that planned ahead of time, or did you just sort of have to shuffle out people because of obligations, or, you know, I noticed that, yeah.
Don't call me on my shit!
Tobias is too smart for your shit. What about the writing on this game? How was it divvied up, I guess? 'Cause it's a lot of
yeah, it's a lot of words. The game is, I think it's the size of 2 average, just, you know, book novels. Yeah, the writing was pretty problematic from the get-go. You know, when we started working on this, I was stupid enough to think I can actually code it and write it, and that was not going to happen because it just takes so much time. So we found a writer. I was developing the scenes, like writing a screenplay for each scene, and the writer put it into words. Because I'm not a native English speaker, it was much faster also because I make a lot of mistakes. I need to, you know, to go back to my text and check it up a lot to find all typos and stuff like that. But the writer couldn't really dedicate enough time towards this game, so we had to switch. And there was a moment where the game was really at risk of not coming out because we couldn't really find a replacement and we couldn't really do it ourselves. We went through a few people who either, you know, left quickly or we just didn't like what they were writing. And finally, Graciana, my artist, actually suggested we stop looking for professional writers and find someone who's actually very dedicated. And she suggested her friend, who technically is a professional writer but never wrote any prose. And he also took his friend and they together finished the game. And I think they really did a great job, and now we are working with them on our next game, Solstice, and this time it's their original story that they come up with everything. I just coded. So yeah, it was a little problematic. It's a lot of work to, you know, write a visual novel, especially one with so many choices. Like if you play it, you don't really see it. Not in a single playthrough because you just see like 20% of what's in the game, but you know, there's a lot of work.
Yeah.
keep the money or take it back.
Take it back. Take it back.
You can go to the forest, or you can go straight back.
Forest.
Yeah, I noticed that when getting all the endings and all the extensions and stuff like that, Cinders starts out with a real undefined personality, and depending on, like, the ending is the same, the events are the same, the prompts are the same. The prompts are the same, who you talk to is the same, but Cinders herself, like, speaks to them differently depending on what her personality is defined by what you've done. So that's a lot of extra words. Like, it occurred to me at some point, I was like, I don't know how, like, all of that would be kept straight, because it's a lot of extra words, and making sure information is the same in every scenario. You know, like, there's not a case where somebody knows something that they shouldn't know because, you know, I just figured it would be a lot to keep straight.
Well, you know, as I said, it's not really difficult, it just needs you to be extra careful, so it's just, I don't know, tiresome and a lot of work, but not really something too hard to do if you just, you know, keep track of everything. Oh, someone on the chat asks if did I have names for different possible permutations. Yes, we do. We have a little, as I said, we have a little design documentation with all the choices, and they got to be named something, you know, just so we can communicate about them.
Take this money.
And Jake asks if I have any other games using similar systems. I would say try Telltale games like The Walking Dead and The Wolf Among Us. They have a little less choices, but they are pretty awesome otherwise, and very cool, very high production values. And they really go for a similar thing where you just can shape up your character's personality, instead of just picking if to kill puppies or to save puppies. It's a really great thing.
Murder all the villagers or give them all $1 million.
I like that Prince Basil says to Perrault, "Excuse me, may I borrow some of your belts? I'll trade you some of my buttons." Well, I don't know if I need any buttons. But I have so many buttons. Can't you take a few? Some of your belts. I like the prince because, again, I guess one thing we haven't dwelled on, we talked about it a little bit when you mentioned Gloria, and I said, well, she's a little dumb, and you said, well, she's not dumb, and explained, and I was like, oh yeah, well, that's another thing I really like, is all of the characters are just people, like, not even the stepmother's evil, from a certain perspective, it just depends on what you as a person value, whether they become your friends or enemies, and all of it's painted as, well, these are people, like, you can think this is evil, but that's what you think, and in fact, like, Perrault is actually, of the characters, Perrault was the one that I was the most dismissive of, I think. Like, it's just my personality. He's not evil or anything, but I kind of disagreed with his values at every turn. And so I kind of ended up shutting him out a lot because, I don't know, I was like, I don't really like, the way you look at the world. And it's not because he's evil, it's just because, I don't know, he seems to value devotion to your duty above all else, and I was like, and he just talks about, well, this is my duty, and it was passed down from my grandfather and my father, and I do it because, I just feel like I should do this, and it's like, have some autonomy, do
well,
something.
You can always seduce him, and then he changes his priorities, so everything's possible.
Yeah, but I was like, grow up, so I didn't seduce him because I was like, grow up, you big baby. Because, well, the thing is, he whines about his situation being changed later, and I don't want to spoil what that is, but he whines about his job being changed, and it's like, you're still working for the king, you get paid bukus, everybody respects you, but you're just not doing what your father and grandfather did, so you're upset, and I thought, like, that's lame, but I can see why some people would, I guess, find it admirable.
Yeah, I think he's the fan favorite.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure he is. He has the look of a fan favorite. The prince I liked a lot. He was my favorite of the guys.
Really?
So
I actually don't like the prince. I think he gets a little too little screen time. I wanted to develop him more, but I didn't really have the time. In the end, I think he appears in the game too scarcely to actually develop him a lot. But I like the idea for him. I just don't think we managed to get through with everything we wanted to say about the prince. Maybe next time, maybe in a sequel or something.
Queen Cinders, the sequel.
Someone asks what is the look of a fan favorite. I guess it's the belts. It got to be, yeah, exactly. It got to be the belts.
It's just Final Fantasy belts.
It's just, belts. Someone asks why I decided to make a game of an old fairy tale and not a completely original plot. Actually, as I said, it was my artist's idea, and I just liked it. I didn't really think much about it compared to writing something purely original, but I like the idea of taking a story everyone knows and then, subverting it, allowing you to make choices that you're like, when you were a kid and you were reading that story, you were like, oh, come on, she could do this, and to make a game that allows you to do everything you really always wanted to do. And it's also because I don't really like Cinderella much as a story. I think it kind of has a wrong message where, like, the only, merit of Cinderella is that she's pretty and patient, so she gets a rich husband in the end. And I wanted this to have some, more feminist overtones with, active female protagonists, stuff like that.
That's certainly reflected by the game, because I did a thing where I was like, let me make all the choices I think Cinderella would make. And I don't want to spoil what ending you get when you do that, but it's